Horshetuhi ka'at lashanka ka'at ra'at Corinna. Hi, my name is Corinna Gould, and I'm the tribal chair for the Confederated Villages of Lashan Nation. And our tribal territory encompasses Alameda, Contra Costa, San Joaquin, and parts of Solano and Napa along the waterways. I'm also the co-founder and co-director of the Sogorea Land Trust, the first urban indigenous women-led land trust in the country.
All right, so we just came from this beautiful walking tour of the Sacred Spaces site. And so after hearing a bit about the concept and how the vision came all about, I want to hear a little bit about what does a shoreline sanctuary, a sacred space, mean to you and tribes?
Yeah, well, our people have been here since the beginning of time, and so it's always beautiful to see that other people are looking at the shorelines as a sacred place. And for us, the marshlands have always been really important to our people. And so I can imagine tule growing here again, which is a beautiful plant that we actually grew. We didn't grow it; it grew by itself, right? But it actually helps to the health of the water, right? It helps to facilitate taking toxins out. But it was a plant that we used for building our houses and our canoes that went along the bay, and we were fishermen. And so it sounds like this is a place that would really thrive for also bringing back habitat for our relatives that have wings and our relatives that have four legs, and that they should be a part of this habitat again. It's because of cities that has gone away. So, when I sit in these places and I walk in these places, because this is where I'm from and I actually still live here, that I could reimagine what that looks like to have children re-engaged inside of this land, to actually begin to think about what it's like to gather oysters here again, to actually begin to think about what it's like to bring back some of those species that have had to find somewhere else to be. It's wonderful when we sit here, and I like to tell this story because when we were sitting here, there was pelicans that were out in the waters, and when I was a kid, the pelicans were on an endangered species list. And about 10 or 15 years ago, I was in Alviso, which is in southern point of the bay, right? And I was standing there one morning, and about 50 pelicans flew over my head. And I realized at that time in my lifetime, human beings changed how they were so that these other beings could be here still. And that they're always my hero when I look at them, because I say, then if we were able to do that in my lifetime, then we're able to change and adapt things now so that it will save us in the future. Not just us, but everything else that lives here.
Oh, and just kind of piggybacking off of that, you mentioned how you can see tribal representation in the space, but what type of specific programming could you see tribal groups wanting to use in the space, or anyone that you think should?
Yeah, if we bring back the tule, then that means that we have somewhere to gather, and we could actually build a replica of our homes here, talk about the history of this land. We could build tule canoes and put it back on the water and show people how that works. We could show young people how those plants work. We could reinvestigate and renew this land so that it actually has California natives growing on it. That would actually be a gathering space, not gathering just for human beings, but it will bring back more life. And birds and other animals, but also give tribal people a way to gather acorns and other kinds of plants that we would use medicinally. So this water also brings to mind, mugwort, which is a medicinal plant that we've used for thousands and thousands of years. It's also one of our traditional burn medicines that we use, and so a lot of people use white sage. California natives actually use mugwort that grows along the waterways. So that's one thing that we could also think about bringing back, and it also has a lot of other medicinal properties as well. So I think that, talking about that and actually walking young people and walking even older people through, and to talk about these beautiful plants that had always been here and may have been displaced by other things that are here now, but really reimagining a way for us to look at this. Shorelines are a place of abundance, right? And so traditionally, our people only had songs of abundance, right? And there's like my nephew, who's a singer and travels across the country, talked to me one time about how the songs that are in the middle of the country, sometimes they're asking for help, that they're saying in their songs that, you know, we're so pitiful that we need help because they had hard winters. In this part of the world, our songs were abundance. Thank you so much for all that's here. That. So there was no such thing as hunger and homelessness in our language, and that is something that we see today. And so if we can imagine a place that has only been created over the last 150 years, revitalized so that there is that abundance here again.
Can you speak a bit about the tribal relationship to the shoreline in the East Bay?
Yeah, I mean, that's where we lived. So where freshwater met saltwater is where our villages were. They were also where our shell mounds were, and shell mounds are the burial sites of our ancestors. And so we lived right alongside the cemeteries of our people, and people all over the world did that. It's not like something that only we did, right? So you often had your relatives buried in your backyard or right next to you, and so our ancestors were like that. We ate shellfish, and that's why they were called shell mounds, but shells were also a way for us to do commerce, because we used the shells to create beads that we would trade with, and so that was a way of doing it. But we also buried our ancestors in these shells that had this value to it, because it was food, it was trade, it was all of these things that were a part of our lives. And so that's how those shell mounds were created. Our ancestors weren't thrown in a trash pile, but they were put there on purpose because of reverence. And so so I can imagine, you know, that there was village sites all along the shores, and actually there's a map from 1909 that this guy named Nels Nelson created that dotted shell mounds along the bay. There were over 425 that ringed the Bay Area at one time, and there's more because as development happens in our territory, we find them all the time. You know, so my dream is that not only do we see this bay like this, but to open up the creeks and waterways that we could actually see the water coming back, to re-engage our imagination in creating these microclimates that had always been here, that's going to actually help to protect us from climate disaster, and to bring back those native plants and environments that are so needed in this part of the world.
What were some activities that happened along the shoreline? Well, actually, you just mentioned a few of those. Did you have anything you want to elaborate, or you feel like you...
You know, fishing, you know, would be great, right? Yes. Fishing, bringing back, you know, making sure our bay is clean enough for that, so that we could actually eat out of it. And I know that when I was doing work with on some other work some years ago, that, you know, we can't actually eat sustainably out of our bay. And so how wonderful would it be for us to actually, as human beings, gather and figure out how do we clean up this bay that we've destroyed in a very short amount of time. You know, it's not just for the indigenous people from this land, but there are migrant people that come here and are trying to feed their families because there's no way to do that, and not knowing that they're poisoning themselves by eating too much fish from the bay, right? How do we then fix this so that as we're cleaning up the bay, that all of these toxic companies that have set up along the waterways have to actually clean it up before sea level rises? How do we create laws that enforce that they can't just up and leave it and destroy the bay even more?
What are some of the important plant and animal species along the shoreline?
Oh gosh, so many. I mean, I mentioned tule and I mentioned mugwort, or some of them are, you know, our acorn, you know, comes from oak trees, would be great, and they provide shade and places for other animals to live. And so it would be nice to have some shady areas like that around the shoreline here. Some beautiful little flowers, like sticky monkey is wonderful, and you can see those little pops of light that comes through. Blue-eyed Susans and the grasses that were traditionally here. I think that other people came here and treated them as weeds, something that was not something that was pleasant to them, and put something else in. And it'd be nice for us to reimagine what a garden like that would look like.
So, how does sea level rise threaten the cultural and historical significance of the land you protect and talk so much about?
Yeah, well, I mean, for sure, the sea level rise would destroy our shell mounds even more than they're already destroyed. Those are our sacred places and the places of ceremony and our villages. And so, as we are already historically erased through history books, and even here, you can't see us in anything in Oakland mostly, right? That the shorelines would actually disappear all of those cultural sites and resources that we have a connection to for thousands of years.
What is your long-term vision for the shoreline?
My long-term vision is that my grandchildren will be able to live sustainably off the shorelines as our ancestors had for thousands of years.
Hey. And what resources and support will you need to achieve this vision for you and your great grandkids and the generations afterwards?
Oh, I think that we need human beings from all walks of life to understand the importance of our shorelines. It's not just the indigenous people, but that it brings, I think that during COVID, we really understood as human beings the importance of us connecting again to the lands and to the waters, and that it helps us as human beings mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And we have known that as indigenous people forever, but science is catching up with us. And I think that it's nice that we're able to, that's what I would like. I would like the health of our communities that live here and come to visit here, because the Bay Area is a place that people from all over the world come to visit, to see that that these are important places that we as a community in Oakland and the Bay Area hold in high regard and want to take care of.
How can Oak reach the greater indigenous community, knowing some of them have left the area and there are different tribes and organizations that make up the tribal population?
Doing walking tours specifically for Native people to come out here. I think that, like many communities of color, that they don't engage a lot in coming to places like this or coming to, and so there's a whole shift and narrative that needs to happen, that these places are only meant for people that are not of color, that we should be able to access it and be able to become part of it. Accessing different community organizations and events. There's a lot of youth programs, Native youth programs in the Bay Area. There are community and cultural programming that's happening to reach out and to engage in doing some programming with those folks.
But yeah, that concludes our interview questions. Did you have anything else that you just wanted to say? And yeah, we really appreciate you giving all your words and wisdom. And yes, I'm always down to walk people along along this space and shoreline and learn more myself. So would love to be connected with more Native folks and other tribes that you may know, that you may feel that would like to learn more about this space and reconnect to it a little bit more. But yes, thank you. Did you have any closing remarks or?
No, let's figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah. All right.